Ladies and gentlemen, hello, good morning, good evening. My name is Sebastian Wenglerz, and I'm your host of The World of the Unseen, where we track the current state of liberty worldwide, and we're trying to get to the bottom of things by revealing the unseen part of it. This is one of the many projects run by Liberty International, which is the oldest organization promoting libertarianism worldwide. Just as we speak, there is a Libertarian Solutions online learning course session. You can sign up anytime at libertarian-solutions.com. Also, a part of our team is right now in Arizona at the Project Arizona 2022, where our President Jacek Spendo and 6 students who won the application contest moved to United States for 3 months to learn, to study the philosophy of liberty, both in theory and in practice. You also should check out Liberty Connector, where we are promoting new and interesting scholarships and opportunities for young people. Yes, every day, ladies and gentlemen, in every part of the world, there's an ongoing battle for freedom. Not every issue is obvious. We as libertarians, we are able to provide a fresh perspective on them because we tend to see what we can't see at the first glance. So that's why we are here today. We are visiting 3 different continents to check up on the progress with fighting tyrants. We will be today in North America, in Australia, and in Asia, and I'm in Europe, so technically 4 continents. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite our first guest today to our studio. Hello, Mr. Khalid Ramizy is today with us. Hello.
Hello, dear Mr. Celestine. Thank you so much for inviting me to this show.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Khalid is a human rights advocate in Afghanistan. He is CEO of Afghanistan Economic and Legal Studies Organization. He's a young leader, a human rights activist. As I said, he is risking his life for liberty, for real. We'll get to the details just in a moment. Let me play for now a short video clip to get into the details of what's going on in Afghanistan at the moment.
The Afghan economy has been struggling for decades. Even before the Taliban took over, almost half the population lived in poverty, and matters have been made worse since the group assumed power. Now, in the middle of Taliban's bid to seek international recognition, get access to millions of dollars worth of frozen funds, the people in South Asian nation are in desperation, forced to take extreme steps. Take a look.
Scars across the abdomen are now common for Afghans. They are being forced to sell their organs to survive. While the country is already struggling with droughts and floods, it is the bitter cold which has devastated the most vulnerable. For the poorest, who have neither food or fuel, international aid organizations are their only hope, and whatever they can scrounge from the snowy streets.
It's really very hard in Afghanistan right now, and there are too many people like me who don't have a husband or a father to support them.
Hundreds are flocking to the city of Herat for surgeries. The crisis has actually driven prices of organs down. Prices have gone down from $2,000 for kidneys to $1,500. Others are contemplating even selling their children to survive.
No one can tell me to sell my children, but we are struggling to keep them alive. And that's why we thought of selling them. Maybe it will be better for them and we get food for the other.
Earlier this month, the United Nations launched its largest single country appeal to raise over $5 billion to help Afghanistan. It is estimated that roughly 90% of Afghans are dependent on aid, and nearly 3 million are displaced in their own country. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
WION.
All All right, Khalid, you used to live in Kabul, in Afghanistan, right? Before, right now you are in Turkey with your family. You are safe. So this is the most important thing. I would like to ask you at the beginning, because I've heard that you have an awesome and pretty unique tradition in your family and of your parents being freedom fighters as well. Could you tell us a little bit about that more? How did you came across the philosophy of liberty? And how did you start your journey?
Thank you so much, dear Sabstein. It is really an honor today for me that I'm one of your guests on this important program. Indeed, my all family members, all of them, they are involved since a very long time in promoting the ideas of liberty and human rights in Afghanistan. My father was also a writer. He wrote a number of books. He was working actively on the ground to fight against the communism ideologies when the Soviet Union, former Soviet Union, occupied Afghanistan. He was one of the person. He was writing articles. He was giving interviews, and he was fighting against the ideologies of communism in the country. And he somehow educated all the family members on the way that we should completely understand the value of freedom, because he experienced a number of regimes, a number of government in the country. And especially he educated my bigger brother, who was a professor in Kabul University, and also he was one of the founder of the organization that at the moment I'm running, and I'm working with them to issue it also, because my father passed away when I was very young, but my father remained his legacy and what he wanted to see in our family, and he educated my bigger brother on a way to issue invest in our lives, on the way to everyone in our family should be a freedom fighter, a freedom advocate, and we all should work for freedom in the country. Because my family, we pass a lot of regimes, a lot of government in the country, and no one, I'm sure that no one knows than our family that how the other systems, or communism, socialist, or mujahideen, or other who invented, who occupied Afghanistan, none of them worked than a free market-based system, then the capitalism system, and then liberal democracy. That's why all our family members still, even at this challenging time, a number of our family members, they are working on the ground for promotion and protection of human rights and freedom in the country. And the other family members, all of us, where we are at the moment, we are continuing our fights for freedom, and we are continuing our work to make Afghanistan a better place for the people, for our nation to live and to work on there freely and without any problem.
Yeah, I guess this is especially important. Your activity is especially important in countries like Afghanistan. Some people say it's easy to be a libertarian in the European Union or in States, but yeah, definitely this is the great work that you're doing for your country. Thank you so much for that. You actually were on the Taliban's kill list. They were chasing you, as far as I know, right? And Afghanistan was in the news. The attention of the world was brought during last year when the United States withdrawn, when the American troops left the country, Taliban took over, and as far as I know, you were in the country at that time, right? Could you tell us a little bit more of what happened at that time? How did you see that from the inside, basically?
Yeah. Unfortunately, we were not thinking to the country should be again on the hand of Taliban this much soon, and we were thinking that we have a very qualified with all weapons, with everything, with all facilities, and also we will have the support of international community. But unfortunately, a lot of things changed, and the country collapsed very soon on the hand of Taliban. As you also mentioned, my name was on the different list of insurgents group because I was working actively in all over the country for promotion of human rights and other values which they see me directly as their enemy. Therefore, the security departments of Afghanistan, they alerted me many times that I have to be careful. Just before one day, the collapse of the country on the hand of Taliban in Kabul, we organized a 2 days national youth conference of the country, which we gathered around 400 young people from all over the country, and we were very busy on organizing of that conference and on a lot of issues. But on the second day, even on the first day of the conference, a suicide bomber attacked us, but the security forces captured him and they killed him. On the second day, my friends, when I was giving a speech, when I was delivering a speech, they came and they told me that the situation outside of the place that we were organizing the conference is not somehow normal, and I have to finish my speech as soon as possible, and we have to leave the people, the audience, they should go, and we should separate the people. That because my friends, they were thinking that even on that day the Taliban will enter, because they were seeing a number of security forces, they were crossing the roads which was very near to the place of our conference, because they were escaping from northern provinces of the country. So after one day that we went, the conference finished, our office was, we were working in the office, I was in some other place. I shared it's a long story, but I want to just tell in here very shortly that after one day, unfortunately, on 15th of August 2021, the president escaped from the country, and the capital of the country, all other provinces became on the collapsed on the hand of Taliban, and Taliban took the power. I stuck with my family members in Kabul for about more than 7 days because of my safety and because of the friends' advices. I changed my location different times, many times, to different places. And on 23rd of August, fortunately, because of the support of a number of our libertarian friends from all over the world, which I'm really grateful from all of them, they managed a plane for us and they took us out of the country. While I was there, one of the questions that a number of people, they were asking that question from me even before the collapse of the country, that is the new Taliban, which they come to the which they will come to the power, if the Taliban come to the power, they will be the new kind of Taliban, or they will be the same Taliban like they were in Afghanistan from 1996 until 2001. I was telling them that no, there is no difference. And today I'm completely sure that there is no difference. They are the same Taliban that they were.
If I may ask, we've seen the footage of Taliban's claiming that indeed they have changed. They are more decentralized. For example, that some groups will allow girls to get a proper education, right? So what you're saying is that those were false claims, right? They were just simply lying to get.
Yes. Unfortunately, there is no difference. Even in the Taliban before, they were directing from one person, for example. But even at the moment, their leader is not so much clear for the world, and they are separated among themselves. For example, in one city, one of their governor or one of their leader, he is saying that girls should go to school, but in another city, their leader is saying that no, girls should not go to school, girls should not go to work. So all these evidence, and also there are a number of other issues which they are not respecting for human rights, which they are not respecting for the freedom of the people, which they are not allowing media to broadcast freely all their news and everything which is happening in the country. There are a number of issues which all of them shows that they didn't change, and they want to continue the same things that they did in Afghanistan in 1996 from 1996 until 2001. That's why I'm always, when I'm talking with friends, especially with liberal friends, I'm saying that the world should have more attention, even at the moment, to Afghanistan, because if we leave, again, it will be a safe home for all terrorist groups.
Yeah, exactly. And tell me, please, what are your predictions for the future? Like, what are Taliban's going to do? What about their next moves? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, this is really an important question. What I want to say before answering this question is that the world should know that the government collapsed, and a terrorist group or any other else under the name of Taliban, they came to power. But the people are on the ground, the people are there, their wishes are with them, and they want a free and a prosperous Afghanistan. This is really important that everyone should know that. And based on the ideology and based on the wish of the people, or the things that the people want, international organizations, international community, and other countries should also work very closely with Afghan nation to Afghanistan should not be a safe home for terrorist group. About the future, I would like to say that there is two scenarios based on my knowledge. The first scenario, if the Taliban come and sit on the negotiation table and accept that they will create or they will establish a government, a government based on the opinion of the people, and they give the opportunity to everyone should join, and they create an inclusive government, which also the world is saying the same thing for them. I'm sure that the situation will somehow change, and again we will go. And I'm on that case, I'm somehow optimistic that again, at least somehow we will go toward at least a sustainable peace or some other opportunities. But the second scenario, if they decline all these issues, and if they continue like the same scenario that at the moment they are doing, I'm sure that it will create a lot of problem for them. They will also lose a lot of opportunities, and the people will be in a very, very bad condition than right now.
Right. So, Khalid, tell me, we as libertarians of the world, people who are watching you right now, how can we support your case? How can we support the fight for human rights in Afghanistan? I know you're a very active freedom fighter who runs many projects. Tell us how we can support you, your people, how we can support the case.
Thank you, dear Sebastian. Just last week we organized a seminar in a city in a province of the country, which is under the name of Oruzgan, a very rural city of the country, which most of the population of the city are also under extreme poverty. On that event, even Taliban, they totally banned girls and ladies they should not participate on such events. But when my colleagues sent the pictures, I saw that even beside all the challenges which exist, the ladies took part to that event, and they participated to that event with burqa, with chaudhary, but still they have the idea, they have the courage they should go they should continue, and they should work or learn these ideas. That picture really gives me hope. At first moment, I was thinking very sad. I was very sad, but later that picture really gives me hope. I'm saying this to all my friends in liberal movements around the world, that the people of the country, they are not terrorists. They are very liberal people. They want freedom. They want a peaceful and a prosperous Afghanistan. And that is why even at the moment, which more than 90% of the country, they are under poverty, but still they want to learn, they want to work for freedom of themselves and for freedom of the country. So what I want to say for liberal friends, for liberal community, or and all our friends in liberal movement, as to they should not forget Afghanistan. They should support the think tanks like ILSO, like other organizations that they are working on the ground actively. And also they should work closely with Afghan people to raise their voice on different important issues which is at the moment happening at the moment in the country. And support us as much as they can.
Yeah, definitely. We will add all the links in the description down below. Hi, thank you so much for being today with us, ladies and gentlemen. We had a pleasure to talk to a human rights activist, Khalid Ramizy. Thank you so much, and please stay with us a little bit. Okay, all right. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, we are moving on. We are having another guest from completely different continent, from Australia to be exact. Very interesting human being. I've come across his work lately, to be honest with you, but definitely we have some catching up to do. So it is my pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to welcome to the studio Conza, who is Libertarian Party's initial chairperson, a libertarian activist, blogger, and a truth seeker. Conza, hello. Thank you so much for being here with us.
G'day, Sebastian. Thanks for having me.
Hello, it's great to have you here. We've heard, the whole world heard a lot for sure about the situation in Australia. I've even came across the term that was coined, Australia lockdown. As we agreed before, while talking before the program, there is not really enough trustworthy news sources these days. You know how it is. So we are here to ask an insider, how much of that is propaganda? Is it really COVID, or is it more government in action? And before I will ask you these questions, yeah, sure. Let me play a little video clip that I've chose. this is a short one, so we'll get back at you in a moment.
I will now go through each of these decisions. First, the lockout. The fully vaccinated can continue as they were. For people who are not vaccinated, lockdown rules will apply to everyone 16 and above. If you are not fully vaxxed, stay home. You are at greater risk of catching COVID, becoming ill, and needing hospital care. You may only leave home for 3 reasons. Medical treatment, including COVID testing or vaccination. For essential goods and services like groceries, power tokens, medications. To provide care and support to a family member or person who cannot support themselves. You cannot travel more than 30 kilometres from your home when leaving for one of the 3 reasons, or the nearest practical destination. If you need to go to the hospital and it's more than 30 kilometres from your home, that's okay. There are only 3 reasons to leave the home now, not 5. Work is not a reason to leave the home for the unvaccinated. The Chief Health Officer has also determined that restriction of movement is critical right now and that 1 hour of exercise for the next 4 days is not essential. Remember, these restrictions only apply to those who are not fully vaccinated.
Life will become very difficult for the unvaccinated from January 31. No pubs, no bottle shops. No gym, no yoga classes. No gigs, no dance floors. No hospital or aged care visits. If you go and get vaccinated today, you can have your second dose by early February. But if you choose to remain unvaccinated, and at this point, it certainly is your choice, you're choosing to put yourself at risk, you're choosing to put the people around you at risk, and you're choosing to increase the burden on our health staff.
All right. Sorry, we had a little technical difficulties. All right, we're back. Very scary, very dystopian speeches. Conza, how does the Australia look right now?
Yeah, thank you, Sebastian. Look, it's terrifying. It's unjustifiable, inept, and utterly disastrous. Australia's approach to COVID, which has essentially been zero COVID, although they would not admit that. But look, the amount of goalposts that have moved, the amount of gaslighting that's happened, just fear. Those 2 states kind of currently leading the charge in terms of Western Australia, Northern Territory, building quarantine camps. Northern Territory has already done that in Queensland as well. And it's happening in Victoria. So various different states around Australia at different kind of levels, but it's almost like one of these premiers is taking the baton in the most authoritarian and dictatorial, utterly ridiculous. But yeah, it's a very interesting take because you often see that and that's portrayed and that stuff news goes around the world. But then say, I'm not in the state of the longest lockdown in the world. So in Victoria, in Melbourne, in a de facto sense, they're talking about, 4th jab, 5th, booster, making those mandated, where the state's claiming they've got a better right to your body than you do. But in a de facto sense, so the vaccinated being segregated, it's kind of medical fascism is my way I kind of summarize it. But there's a lot of enforcement, a lot of fines, a lot of fear and a lot of compliance in that sense. But then also in another way that, even in the Soviet Union, like black markets springing up. And so whether the QR codes or the vax passes are actually being checked at the cafe or a variety of places, where the masks are being actually worn, no longer mandated outside. But there's been times where they have been and ridiculous other controls. So it's a lot more open than you would assume here in this particular state. But then there's others that, like Northern Territory, just ramp it up. Obviously, their prior state interventions have not worked. And it's that escalation piece. It's, as Mises said, the middle of the road policy leads to socialism, and failed policy after failed policy means they got to intervene in other ways, and it just gets ramped up. And yeah, it's a challenge to fight that, because there's a lot of fear, and unless you've been unplugged of sorts, or enlightened, or you're aware, like, libertarians are, it's that daily fear piece that it makes people so easily controllable.
Yeah, definitely. This is the most important issue, I would say. And on top of that, there's this ratchet effect taken into the play, because basically politicians, they fell in love with those press conferences, right, with the attention of the people that they are getting. I've seen probably most of us around the world. We have witnessed also politicians just being basically tell you how you will live your life for the next 2 weeks, right? If you will be able to work, learn, right? This is definitely something that is terrifying. And you mentioned concentration camps. This is how you call them. I've also heard about those government facilities, right, where the COVID patients are being kept. So tell me, is it the real thing? Is it as scary as they say in the media? Because personally, I was terrified when I've heard about it.
It's quarantine camps is the technical term in Queensland, calling them health hotels. So there is this big emphasis from the parasitic ruling elite, that political elite, that they don't want it to cast it in these ways. There's a very much a big campaign to try and shine a turd, so to speak, for want of a better word, where there's still that marketing angle, like there's an election coming up soon, and they're all very conscious, the politicians, of it. It's not like I think there's a principle that their ideology they're pushing per se. It's like, what do the polls say? And in conjunction with that, oh, well, we're here to save you. We're all we care about is safety. And I think there's this awesome quote from Isabel Patterson in The God and the Machine, in one of the great books on political philosophy last century. She zeroed in what she aptly called the humanitarian with the guillotine. And to me, that's what a lot of them are. It's they've even if you assume nothing nefarious, it's they care, but they're a humanitarian with the guillotine. And basically, they wish to be the prime mover in the lives of others. They cannot admit either that divine or natural order by which men and women have the power to help themselves. The humanitarian then puts himself in the place of God, and not necessarily religious, but just with that idea, the humanitarian then is confronted by two awkward facts. One, that the competent do not need their assistance, and two, that having the majority of people, if unperverted, positively do not want to be done good by the humanitarian. And essentially, though, we're having considered what is good, what others might consider as good might be, and who is to decide on what is good and what to do about it. Ms. Patterson, as she points out, of course, what the humanitarian actually proposes is that they shall do what they think is good for everybody. It is at this point that the humanitarian sets up the guillotine. She then concludes that humanitarian, in theory, is the terrorist in action. And you're right, like that's literally a lot of what you see. Different premiers, they got the podium, they're there, they're the savior. The feedback from the polls is that's what, because of all the fear, that they're here to save and they do better. And it's that vicious cycle. And, to break it by breaking out of the matrix, so to speak, turning off the TV, not being uninformed, but realizing that isn't really reality. It's like a condensed, the amount of fear porn and that, and your mental health, if you don't just don't, in terms of turning that off, but you're still going to get the information you need, helps a lot.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Fear is the way to control people, control the masses. And as you've mentioned, like we as individuals, we are in completely different situations, different conditions, right? So the government wants to apply the same strategies for like millions of people. It doesn't make any sense. Would you agree with me that right now for us, for libertarians, but not only for libertarians, for everybody, I would say our biggest mission is right now to put a stop on it, to put a stop on the mandatory vaccines. Vaccination, in my opinion, this is really scary, because the sole notion of the government being able to grant your rights based on some biological issues, this is really gross. This is scary. We've already seen that like 100 years ago, as far as I remember. So tell me, what's the future for Australia? How is the political climate like? Can we expect any changes for now?
Yes. Look, I think what brings to mind when you ask that question is like, so there's a massive anti-movement here, whether it's anti-vax, not anti-vax, anti-mandate, being clear cut there, that as libertarians, we're not pro-vax, we're not anti-vax, just like we're not pro-drugs or anti-drugs, we're pro-private property rights. Like, that's the rich mosaic, that's the solution, that's the private law framework that can set up whatever personal preferences people have, that where they don't initiate aggression against anyone else. But there is a big anti-movement. But the issue is a lot of activists out there. What I'd say, and Mises has this epic quote in the anti-capitalist mentality. It's an anti-something movement displays a purely negative attitude. It has no chance whatever to succeed. Its passionate diatribes virtually advertise the program that they attack. People must fight for something that they want to achieve, not simply reject an evil, however bad it may be. They must, without any reservations, endorse the program of the market economy. And that's a bit of not pet peeve of mine, but a pushing point, is that a lot of places all over the world, we see this against mandates, against, segregation, the elements of medical fashion, but it's what are you for? And to me, the private property rights base is essentially the solution. So look, even taking, the most fervent pro-mandate advocate, it's like, look, if simple as that, private property rights based solutions. So the owner sets conditions of entry for their property. So if you're, whatever that is, whether it's a hospital, whether it's a school, whether it's a business, a cafe, private residence, what does that person, that owner or manager, want to imply? Is that anti-mask? Is it no masks? Is it all masks? Is it temperature checks? Is it going to be boosted times 10? It's whatever that wants to be. And so you can take the most fervent when communicating, paranoid, person, and like, look, if you want to go to a grocery store that only serve boosters, people that are vaccinated, temperature checks, have a PCR test, blah, 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 by all means. And so, maybe it would be the case that individuals will go there, but then it's also, by the same token, what does it matter to you, the individual who's, ultra concerned, if, someone who is young, healthy, going to a pub that necessarily doesn't care, and they're putting themselves at risk. Like, it's two people have a voluntary relationship, A and B, the business owner and the individual, as some third party C who isn't going there. What do you care? So it's a win-win situation where if you either care, you don't, or there's a mix. That framework is the answer, but no one really pushing that. And so it's like everyone can have the reality that they want, and obviously by the market, if the business owners are setting conditions that aren't helpful or the consumers don't want, then they go bankrupt. And then so we have this test, and so over the last 2 years, you talked about it earlier, but there's central planning. So where one rule to rule them all. So you could be in the city, it's very a lot of cases, or you can be out in the rural, no cases, haven't seen ever, but still forced to wear a mask outside. And it's just crazy. But coming back to in terms of movement, that'd be what I'd be encouraging. There are a few politicians in place who've been on the anti-wagon of sorts, not as principled or radical as I think they need to be as effective. But there's a massive movement in Australia, we've got preferential voting. So it's not like the US where it's kind of one vote and winner takes all in a sense, or through the electoral college. But here the minor parties have a much bigger chance, where you could put the major parties at the bottom, and you're just not going to, waste your vote, because, if you want to vote for one of those at the end, but you can have all the people, all the parties, the minor parties, join together. So it's an interesting case where some of them are joining up and potentially talking about forming a coalition. I certainly hope there's going to be, there's a lot of, in Australia, like just historically, no one's really voted for anyone for quite some time, like decades. It's everyone's voting against someone. And I think that's a bit more universal as well. It's like, who's more anti-establishment? Who's, don't like this person. They've botched it. They've done a terrible job, as, state and politicians do. And then it's like, okay, well, we just need some other guy. And so, yeah, it's interesting how it's going to play out.
Right. Heading towards the end, I would also like to ask you, as far as I know, the Australian border also has been closed for foreigners for over a year. Also, living in the country is not easy. How does that affect your economy?
Yeah, obviously not great at all. There's essentially Australian citizens who've been locked out of returning home, and it's often, the status often have, like, if you don't like it, you can leave. Well, you can't even do that, like, in terms of needing exemptions, special orders. Friend Stephen Livera, so Bitcoin and Australian economist, podcaster, like having to get exemptions for business, leave, and rejected, and essentially has had to rescind Australian citizenship to become freer, to then travel the world and do what his profession allows him to do. Friends over in the States, where certain situations, if they came back, they then wouldn't be able to leave, guaranteed to get back to the States where they're currently based. So look, you can't imagine anything positive at all there. It's not helpful at all. And again, it's where the private property rights based solution would solve that. Like, what's the principle there? It's like immigration, right? And essentially the state, dictating who can and can't come in. And with Novak Djokovic, essentially had a private invitation for a tennis tournament, the Australian Open, but politics, the state intervening, interjecting and making it, Australia, the Australian nation state, like, laughable as a backwater internationally. It's definitely a shame.
The private property rights, it all comes down to that. At the end of the day, we definitely need to remind the Australian politicians that we own ourselves and they do not own us. Definitely, Conza, thank you so much for being here today with us. If you're able to stay with us for a few minutes longer, please do, ladies and gentlemen. And we had the pleasure to talk to Conza, who's a libertarian activist. Thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, we are moving forward. We are heading straight to United States. We're having a very special guest. Let me welcome you. Let me welcome to our studio Dr. James Lark, who is an applied mathematics professor at the University of Virginia. He's also a Liberty International board secretary, and of course, a longtime libertarian activist legend in the movement. Dr. Lark, hello, thank you so much for being here with us.
Well, Sebastian, thank you very much for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to be here. And your previous guest, it was fascinating to hear his comments about Australia, which is a country I've had the pleasure of visiting and for which I've always had great love. To hear how badly things are going in Australia, it's very depressing.
Yeah, it's very sad indeed. Today we will be talking about Joe Biden's first anniversary as the president of United States. Let me play a short video clip at the beginning, and then we will jump straight into into our conversation.
If you entrust me with the presidency, you do not pay any tax at all, because we don't need a tax code. Let me take this moment to say something we don't say nearly enough. The days of cozying up to the law is over. I will not let that happen. You have my word. Give people school choice with results available immediately. I hear their voices. If you listen, you can hear them too. Nearly a century ago, Franklin Roosevelt pledged a New Deal. Too much power. And my fellow Americans, that is unforgivable. Those are words for our time. Under President Biden, American soldiers, military, stay in their homes with dignity. I accept this nomination. Thank you, and may God bless you, and may God protect our life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I've decided to use this short fake libertarian Joe Biden's acceptance speech because summarizing his time in the office in 2 minutes is a little bit hard. And of course, your opinion, your judgment depends on how you look at different issues. For example, for us libertarians, it's not really a huge win if a politicians declare a new spending program, for example, right? And that's why we are here. We are here to reveal what's unseen and what is really going on. Dr. Lark, I've included a little bit provocative question in the title today. Do Americans, do people in the United States miss Donald Trump? Tell me, do they miss him?
Well, some do. I'm not one of them, mind you, and I strongly suspect that most libertarians do not regard President Trump, former President Trump, with much fondness. Although, in fairness, there are a decent number of libertarians who felt that, at least with respect to some important issues, President Trump did okay, and he certainly was much better in some ways than previous president, at least his predecessor, President Obama, and is better than his successor, President Biden. But again, that's on a fairly limited number of issues. And I feel it's fair to say that the general libertarian perspective concerning President Trump was not at all favorable. Again, there's an old joke about even a broken clock is right twice a day. And President Trump, on some issues, I think was at least okay. And he may have been okay for the wrong reasons. Sometimes people actually do the right thing, but for the wrong reasons. So I think that there are not a lot of Americans, certainly not a lot of libertarians, who miss President Trump. Those who do, again, part of it very well may be that they think that the successor, Mr. Biden, is ever so much worse. Again, it depends, as you say, it depends upon the issues. There are many libertarians for whom President Trump was an utter disaster on certain and very important issues, at least of particular importance to them. And so anybody, I think, would be better than President Trump.
Yeah, I guess. But even right now, after a year of Joe Biden's administration in the office, we are already able to say a lot about his plans, right? Some people might say that the beginning, the first quarter is the most important because it will show if the new president is somehow able to break the status quo, to change the existing state of affairs. And Biden's administration based his campaign on returning to normal policy, right? Declaring our independence from virus. Yeah, that might sound a little bit weird for now, as we are witnessing the highest COVID numbers at the beginning. So let's start maybe with some of his achievements about this year, Dr. Lark. What would you say would be the biggest Biden achievement for now?
Well, I'm not sure that he really has that much in the way of achievements, at least in the sense of positive achievements. And I assume most people, when they say achievements, they usually mean positive achievements. I really don't know that President Biden has a lot. I actually, in preparation for this program, I was looking at the commentary that has come forward to review President Biden's first year. And I've looked at commentary from a wide variety of authors, a wide variety of perspectives. People who identify themselves with what we call the political left, actually, in some cases, they actually feel that President Biden has actually accomplished a lot, mostly because of a rather substantial, I think, $1.9 trillion package that supposedly was there to address the COVID and its consequences, as well as a roughly $1.2 trillion bill that was passed that dealt with so-called infrastructure issues. And of course, many people in the United States, particularly politicians, have a rather broad conception of what we mean by infrastructure. In this case, largely it means issues of bridges, roads, and now more and more infrastructure with respect to the internet. So there are people certainly on, you might say, on Mr. Biden's side of the fence who feel he has had some accomplishments. Although, again, even they, I think a lot of their praise for him is largely he's not Donald Trump. Many people on the left side, I think they regarded Donald Trump as, if not Satan, at least related to Satan by blood, and thus anything would be better. With respect to people on shall we say, a different side of the fence, I don't think there are too many who give Mr. Biden a great deal of credit for accomplishment, particularly since Mr. Biden campaigned and urged the American people to vote for him because he claimed that he would restore normality. And in this case, normality meant more, if you will, civil discourse about politics. There was a feeling that Mr. Trump basically added a coarseness, a nastiness to politics. And I think, by the way, to some extent that's true. And there was a feeling that Mr. Biden, because of his long term in the United States Senate and his willingness to work with people on the other side of the aisle, or at least as he described it, there would be a feeling that our politics might not be as bitter, as nasty in terms of discussion of legislative proposals. I don't think anybody looks at Mr. Biden and the way he's comported himself will then say, well, he has actually aided constructively in returning us to a era or a time of more civilized discourse. Now, of course, whether that civilized time ever existed, one could get an argument. But I don't think that President Biden's behavior has in any sense tried to reinforce a notion of actually trying to come together of bipartisanship or multi-partisanship. I think he has governed as very much a partisan, which does not surprise me, frankly. I've known about Joe Biden for a long time because of his time in the United States Senate. I never regarded him as some sort of unifier, some sort of healer. That was basically his press clippings and his group of people who were promoting his candidacy, not I.
Yeah, definitely. This is what you've mentioned, that Biden spread a lot of promises basically during his campaign, and right now we see that the numbers, that the results are at the all-time low when it comes to approval rating. He only has 42% of Americans supporting him as a president. So definitely nobody likes broken promises, right? And let's see at some of the events of some of the statistics that took place this year. Like the United States are experiencing the highest inflation in 30 years, over 30 years. I've seen President's White House GDP statement from like 2 days ago, and definitely the administration thinks that the economy is in great shape. I'm kind of surprised because only less than 200,000 jobs were created in December. So how does his policy affects the economy itself?
Well, there's a natural tendency on the part, I think, of pretty much every administration, really since perhaps this over the last 100 years of presidents to basically claim that they have great powers to bring about great things in the economy, and in many cases, the only thing. It is very, very rare that a president can actually have a major beneficial impact. And usually that beneficial impact is by trying to essentially help to push the Congress to cut taxes, to cut regulation, to basically move us in a libertarian direction. The vast majority of other things that presidents do tend to move us in the wrong direction, both domestically and with respect to foreign policy. Of course, a lot of presidents end up getting us into wars, which are a very bad business indeed. From what I can tell, to the extent that the economy is moving forward, this is, by the way, the sort of the natural inclination of free people who are able to come together to borrow, to truck and barter. So when President Biden tries to take credit for the economy moving forward, I think he is doing what what is rather typical for presidents, and that's to claim something for which he is at best tangentially responsible, and from what I can tell, has really had very little positive impact. Remember, of course, we had a major economic dislocation by virtue of the outbreak of COVID. And so it would not be surprising that as vaccines take place, as more and more people are able to return to the marketplace, so to speak, that we would see economic activity starting to return somewhat to normal. But again, for Mr. Biden to claim responsibility for this, or for the Congress to claim responsibility for the good effects, I think is quite pretentious.
All right, definitely. President Biden also received heavy criticism in August last year for his handling of U.S. Complete withdrawal from Afghanistan. That was the longest war, probably almost 2 decades since it began. We talked today in our program to Khalid Ramizy, who is a human rights activist from Afghanistan. Ladies and gentlemen, also our guest, Dr. Lark, was a chairman of the Libertarian Party, as far as I know, at the time when 9/11 happened. I thought that we definitely need to ask you what's your opinion on that situation, on this mission.
Well, as you correctly note, I had the honor of serving as the Libertarian Party's national chair during the 2000 to 2002 term, which included 9/11, and it was a very dark time for America, because we actually saw Americans being killed in the United States. Frankly, in some ways, it was surprising that something like that had not happened previously, because unfortunately, the United States has tried to serve as a world's policeman for many years. We've intervened in conflicts, in wars that are not, as far as I can tell, really our business. And it was not that surprising to me and my Libertarian Party colleagues that we would see some sort of blowback. That's a term that was popular at that time, of blowback, to see people in the United States being attacked by folks who felt that the United States was intervening where it didn't belong, and the United States was killing people where we had no business killing people. So we engaged in a war that was ostensibly started for the purpose of tracking down those who were killing Americans. And if government has any legitimate purpose, it is to protect the life and liberty and property of people. And bringing criminals to book is a perfectly appropriate function of government, if it has any validity at all. The unfortunate thing, of course, is as these things tend to happen, the war sort of widened, and more the United States took on the responsibility of trying to build or rebuild government and civil society in Afghanistan. And that's, I think, by any reasonable standard, that's a fool's mission. And unfortunately, we spent something like 2 decades on this adventure. And it was not terribly surprising that the denouement was one in which we saw essentially chaos. By the way, I think that President Biden is probably taking some unfair criticism about certain aspects of the withdrawal process. There's a certain extent to which he just happened to be standing there when these things happened. I think it was important for us to withdraw, and there were going to be problems regardless of what manner the withdrawal actually managed to play out. And so I think that he is drawing some criticism that would have been true for anybody who happened to be in the position of president when the withdrawal took place. Sebastian, I'm sorry. I think you're muted. I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. I'm terribly sorry. Yeah, definitely there are more things we can go on for hours talking about his fails. I would say I would also add U.S. Mexico border crisis, which is also on the rise. The numbers right now. So definitely there is a lot of things to do in the United States. Of course, Joe Biden is not ideal candidate for libertarians. Definitely, we can multiply those arguments, but at the end, I would like to talk about the probably number one topic in the world right now, about the ongoing situation in Europe with Russia on the Ukraine and the Russian border, but we still have our guests in the studio. So let's add Khalid and Conza to the studio. Let's try to talk about this situation. What solutions can we figure it out in here, if any? All right, so we are all ready. So then, just to be official, ladies and gentlemen, we still have everybody in the studio, but our guest today was Dr. James Lark, libertarian activist, applied mathematics professor. Thank you so much, Dr. Lark. Stay with us, please, and we will add Khalid and Conza. Hello guys, welcome back. And yes, we have the topic that is probably number one in the world right now. So we have some say that we have World War III at our doors, and I'm curious what is your take on the Russian President Putin's actions, which are also very scary to be for me living in Europe. Khalid, let's start with you. How do you feel about the situation in Europe right now in Russia?
Thank you, Sebastian. We are also wondering a lot, all Afghans, about the current situation in Ukraine. One of the things that we are wondering a lot, that if something happened in Ukraine, everything about Afghanistan everyone will forget about Afghanistan, and the Taliban will do everything that they want to do for the people and for the country. Because if something happened in Ukraine, it will observe all the attention of the world. But in the meantime, because in Afghanistan, at the moment, Daesh, ISK is also growing very fast after the collapse of the government. And they are working actively, especially in northern parts of Afghanistan, which we have border with Tajikistan, with Uzbekistan, and with Turkmenistan. And that is also another scenario, another issue for Afghans that we are wondering a lot. And even we heard a lot that Russia will also somehow interfere into the region to somehow control and somehow keep themselves safe from the growing of Daesh in the region. But but the main point at the moment is that Afghan people, they at least they want a sustainable peace for their country, and at least they want to live peacefully in the country, not to escape, not everyone to escape from the country. But if something happened, as I mentioned in Ukraine, everyone will forget totally Afghanistan, and I am so sorry to say that Afghanistan will be a very safe house for terrorist group, for Taliban, and also for Daesh, and they can do a lot of bad things again for the world. That's why we have to be very careful. Even US withdraw all its troops from Afghanistan, but they should not totally forget Afghanistan. they should have their strategical thinking about the region and about especially about Afghanistan. Otherwise, again, it will be on the hand of. I'm thinking somehow about that. Otherwise, Afghanistan will be somehow also on the hand of Putin government.
Yeah, of course, and definitely. We in here in Poland, when I'm right now, we say that it's not really it's not really easy to get rid of Russians as soon as they enter your home. It's basically impossible, right? So, Conza, from your perspective, tell me, please, how does the situation between Russia and Ukraine looks like?
Yeah, well, I guess Australia being an ally of the United States, it's, so their involvement, we can kind of potentially be dragged into. I know there's been talk of that, but for me, war obviously I think summarize it, the price men are forced to pay in order to keep peace among the politicians. And then peace as well is a failure of governments to function, properly. But when you kind of, I think, well, the key principle I think I have here, and it reminds me of this a quote from Jacob Wisniewski. So and I hope if I could just read it out, for the vast majority of people, trying to identify bigger and lesser evils in any sufficiently distant and complex conflict between state and state-like groups is a toxic waste of time. Unless one is a high-level specialist on the matter, one is well advised to admit being rationally ignorant and refrain from playing the game of siding with lesser monsters against greater ones. In such situations, it is far safer and healthier to remind oneself of the fact that all states and state-like groups are monsters, and then to make a sustained effort to drive this point home to as many individuals as possible, especially those directly affected by a given interstate conflict. So only by consistently utilizing this approach can we hope to eventually bring a critical mass of individuals to the realization that the only real conflict is between nations, whatever that means, good or bad, and so all good or bad states, but between peaceful producers and violent parasites, especially of the institutionalized variety. On the other hand, by trying to pragmatically pick sides in a conflict between such parasites, you will only play into their hands by dividing what might otherwise be a united global society of liberty-minded persons. So in other words, don't try to be an armchair politician where you can and should remain a liberty-minded educator and cultural entrepreneur. So that's kind of my take, where nitty-gritty details, who and what I'll be refraining from. But yeah, like war is the health of the state. It's unjustifiable. There is a qualifier, as you know, from some of the war hawks have, where another quote where Rothbard in War, Peace and the State, and if I could read this out as well, if Smith and a group of his henchmen aggress against Jones and his bodyguards, then pursue Smith to the gang of their lair, we can cheer Jones on and his endeavor, and we, others in society interested in repelling aggression, may contribute financially or personally to Jones's cause. But Jones has no right, any more than does Smith, to aggress against anyone else in the course of his just war, to steal other people's property in order to finance his pursuit, to conscript others into his posse by use of violence, or to kill others in the course of his struggle to capture the Smith forces. So if Jones should do any of these things, he becomes a criminal as fully as Smith, and he too becomes subject to whatever sanctions are meted out against criminality. So I think at the underlying nature of it all, the state is still that, gang of thieves writ large. That's my take.
Thank you so much, Conza. That's basically it. This is the libertarian message that we want people to comprehend. And Dr. Lark, I would also like to ask you, because I'm seeing that there's this misconception, I would say, among libertarians in the United States, that the state, as a policeman of the world, right, your military, your government, military interventions in the world are the root of all evil. Of course, a lot of the times this is the case, but not every time, I would say. Living in Middle Europe, definitely I can guarantee you that like your help was essential at some point for us. At least this is what we see. And tell me, is here anything that we cannot see? What's the unseen part, and what's your take on this?
Well, first of all, I'd like to congratulate my two distinguished colleagues, both of whom have made extremely important points. The first one, that in some cases, crises, as they're labeled, such as this, cause people to forget about many, many other really horrible situations. And I think that's an extremely valuable point. The other point was war is the health of the state. And I think there's a natural tendency on the part of decent people to want to help those who are under duress, who are being aggressed against. Unfortunately, in many cases, and this is just one of the sad facts of life, sometimes we really can't do much to stop it. We can in some cases provide assistance to those who are being aggressed against, but in cases of state versus state, it very well may be that we think we're intervening on the side of the good guys, and in some cases maybe we are, but there are plenty of examples where, at least in the United States, we have engaged in military efforts to help what we thought were the good people, the good guys, the guys on the side of goodness and niceness. Only we found out that we didn't make the situation any better. In fact, in many cases, we contributed to an even worse situation. And so I think that we have to be very, very careful about, first of all, ascertaining what's actually going on, and we have to actually get the facts of the situation. And then we have to, if we're going to take action, we have to do it in a framework of what I would consider to be libertarian values. We can't engage in the sort of activities where, again, we start being the evil that we're supposedly fighting against. So again, I think both of my colleagues have made two very important points, and I congratulate them and thank them.
Right. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. That's it for today. See you next month. Thank you so much to my dear guests, and thank you to all the people who watched us. Make sure to follow us on social media. We as Liberty International, we are giving you daily updates, memes, information. We have this Libertarian Solutions online course right now going on. So see you next month. Once again, thank you so much for being here. My name is Sebastian Węglarz, and remember, you own yourself. Peace, love, and liberty. Goodbye.
Stay free, everyone.